are back on the Zero Hour. I'm your host, Richard RJ Eskow. I always look forward to talking to my next guest. Mike Elk is the publisher and editor of the Payday Report, which I strongly encourage you to read at paydayreport.com and also contribute to. He regularly checks in with us on labor and organizing issues. He's one of my favorite reporters out there, covering a critical beat at a time when our mainstream media have neglected it. So without any further ado, Mike Elk, welcome back to the Zero Hour.
It's great to be on, Richard, and an exciting time here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, tell us about it. You got an election coming up. You got a lot of movement going on. Give us the story, if you would.
Yeah, next, not this coming Tuesday, but the following Tuesday after that, May 17th, we're going to have a primary election here in Pennsylvania. There's a big Senate election, which is getting a lot of coverage. John Fetterman and Connor Lamb are in a Democratic primary. It looks like, from all indications, that Fetterman's going to pull it out. Although I think it is important that readers know that John Fetterman is not the progressive that he claims. He supported fracking. He wanted to frack in Braddock. He, opposed taxing UPMC, which is the largest employer in the state of Pennsylvania, and shields itself as a nonprofit, but is run like a for-profit with, the CEO of UPMC making $10 million a year, probably more than that now. $10 million was a few years ago. And he's been very silent on sort of the socialist takeover here in Pittsburgh. And so while, Fetterman is getting a lot of headlines because, he has this fundraising juggernaut and he has this persona, the person who I think is really going to shake up the national conversation is Summer Lee. Summer Lee is the first Black woman ever elected to the state house from Western Pennsylvania. She's actually a high school friend of mine. We went to high school together, ran track together. So I've known Summer since she was about 15. And over the past 5 years, Summer has led a real movement here to sort of change the city. She ran for state rep 5 years ago against, 4 years ago against Paul Costa, who was part of a big political legacy. She beat him. The only union that backed her was the UE, United Electrical Workers, which my dad used to be the director of organization, and they were heavily involved in that. They beat him, and then Summer didn't stop there. Summer formed a group called Unite as an alternative to sort of DSA, because a lot of these folks had come out of the DSA world, and that just became like, a Stalinist purge show here in Pittsburgh. It was not. It was really something out of like a French surrealist film, the purge trials they had of some of their members. And I think a lot of people found that atmosphere toxic. So Summer drifted away from that and formed this group called Unite. Unite has played a major role in this city. Sarah and Murato and Summer Lee first got elected as state reps, beating incumbents. Then they helped elect another 3 state reps to various seats and beating incumbents here. And in that process, not only did they help elect another 3 reps, they also they then helped beat the county council president for the county. And then they helped elect a new mayor here, beating the incumbent mayor. And not only that did they help elect a new incumbent mayor, Ed Gainey. They also flipped the court of common pleas here, and had a slate of candidates that won. It's quite interesting that even in Connor Lamb's own judicial district, there is a socialist magistrate. So we've seen this tremendous growth here of the movement. And now Congressman Mike Doyle, after about almost 30 years, is retiring. And Summer Lee, who's 34, she's a former civil rights lawyer. She's been a state rep for the past few years. She's organized. She's running for that seat. And I certainly think this is someone who you're going to be hearing a lot more about. We're already seeing the race get a lot of national attention. APEC and its affiliates have spent over $2 million against her. She's their number one target. But the guy that they have up against her, Steve Irwin, not much there to see. Steve Irwin is a union-busting lawyer. He ran a union-busting law firm. He claims to not done union busting. That was only one part of it, but the records show otherwise. He is was a former Rendell appointee to the state cabinet, to the banking secretary. And he's running against Summer Lee in probably one of the most racist, dirtiest campaigns I think we've ever seen. The problem is nobody really likes Steve Irwin.
Mhm.
And the attack ads that AIPAC are running, I don't know who came up with these ads. The ads are literally showing photos of Summer that they took from her campaign material. Nice looking photos of a very sharp young woman, and saying this woman wants to dismantle the Democratic Party. And quoting her.
Which to me is not a bad slogan for a Democratic candidate.
And
right
they're
there.
using her best photos for the attack
Yeah.
ads. So
Yeah.
a lot of people are getting introduced to her from the attack ads, and they're backfiring because people are saying, oh, there's a young black woman running for Congress. Oh, I didn't know that. And she doesn't like the Democratic Party. She wants to, And so I think the attack ads, if they had a competent candidate and some good attack ads. I mean, typically when people run attack ads, there's stuff like, oh, this guy voted to kill puppies. They find
Right.
weird vote and they twist it out of context. These ads are, oh, she says she wants to dismantle the Democratic Party and Joe Biden's not doing a good enough job. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily a knock on her.
No, I don't think so. And before you go any further, Mike, just because I'm an emotional guy, I don't want to get excited about her if she could lose. How's it? Because she sounds really exciting. How's it looking for her right now?
Well, there was a poll released about a month ago that showed that she was up by 25 points.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that when people got to know her biography, I mean, if there was a good candidate running against her, but they have this guy in his late 60s who's a former, corporate lawyer, who's a rich guy who plays the accordion in his ads. I mean, really appealing to the young voters out there.
Yeah, that's really.
He plays the accordion in his ads. It's weird.
That's really. I'm sorry, I have to stop you there while I absorb that, because when I was a kid, there was an accordion player who used to play at everybody's bar mitzvah in Hebrew school, and he would play the accordion, and then he would say, "And now the bar mitzvah boy is going to dance with his best girl, his mom." And he would play, some Yiddish song in the accordion. So I have associations with it. That to me is not charismatic political campaigning. But I'm sorry, I threw you.
No, I mean, it's not like the Nina Turner case in Cleveland where there's a black, she ran against a black city council member. Yeah. This is someone no one knows, and all they're learning about him was he forged his campaign signatures. He's a union buster, and he keeps saying racist stuff about Summer Lee. This is one of the nastiest elections we've ever seen in Western PA. I mean, to spend $2 million against her.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so. What kind of racist stuff is he saying? Do you remember?
We're going to come out with an article about it. I mean,
okay.
They've called her a professional protester, and then she's shot back. They've said other things like that, and they've really, they've gone after her, and I mean, it's sort of weird. I'm saying this as a Jew, right? To see them use Israel as a wedge issue in Western PA because nobody cares. I mean, what AIPAC is really doing is trying to run these attack ads around just basic Democratic Party issues. And they're not working. I mean, if there were effective attack ads that were going after her and twisting some vote in some weird way, I would say they'd maybe had a shot if they had a good candidate behind them. But they simply don't. And so I think it's her race to lose right now. I mean, she's got a ground game. She's just from anecdotally, folks I know who've been out on doors and just going around town. Last week I was out on a date, and a woman actually accused me of name dropping Summer Lee, which, there's a kernel of truth there. It's sort of funny when a childhood buddy, becomes potentially, a future congresswoman. And, I was out with Summer this weekend. We were out in Homestead, which is a big steel area. And, she's got depth. She's got an ability, particularly around environmental issues, that we haven't seen in this region. I mean, if you look at Fetterman, he's pro-fracking, right? Whereas Summer's anti-fracking. And they both, cut their teeth as politicos in Braddock, same area. Very different playbooks. Obviously Fetterman's trust fund kid. He went to Harvard.
Right.
Summer came from a very working class background. She went to high school where I went to Penn State, went to Howard Law. Somebody who's just, I know, up until a few years ago was living at her mother's house because she was paying off student loans.
Right. We know common story. So tell me, Mike, what's her district? It's all of Pittsburgh, part of Pittsburgh, some of the surrounding area. What's the geography?
It's all of Pittsburgh and a lot of the surrounding suburbs, and it stretches actually into Westmoreland County, which is a county about 45 minutes south of here. So it goes, I mean, it's a district that's about 15-20% Democratic registration edge. And some of the areas it stretches into are deep, deep Trump country, into the next county. And so, I have a lot of family from that county. So I think for her to get elected there would be quite a thing.
Sounds like the AIPAC ads saying she wants to dismantle the Democratic Party could really help her in that part of the district.
Yeah, I think they could. And it's the first time that, the other thing I think that's going to help her is this, leaked Roe v. Wade decision. She's the only woman in the race, and she's a young woman. And so, I think people are going to walk into the booth, and she has a great name for a politician, Summer Lee. Everybody around here joking, it's summertime, right?
Right, sure, yeah.
And, it's really thrilling. I first met Summer when we were running track together when I was 15, to watch someone you knew grow up and mature into this political figure who is a leader. And who, I've had occasion to collaborate with. She was featured in our documentary with Kamel Bell on CNN. That was nominated for an Emmy. And her critique in the documentary was quite fascinating of U.S. Steel. She at one point was talking about, U.S. Steel is still in her district, and there's still a little bit of U.S. Steel left here in Pittsburgh. And they're allowed to run rampant over environmental laws, particularly air pollution laws. Pittsburgh is the only city on the East Coast with an F rating from the American Lung Association.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Which is, by the way, a pharmacy industry-funded organization, so they're not going to go way out on the left. So if they give it that rating, it's bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. It's been particularly rough with COVID, having long COVID. When I was out in Montana and in Idaho, my lungs were a lot better out there in that air. I could tell the difference versus being here. And she's really gone after U.S. Steel. When she first got elected, I covered a hearing where she went into this air crisis hearing. There was a fire at the U.S. Steel plant here at Clarendon Coke Works. That's where they're converting coal to coke, very dirty process. There was a fire, and for 3 weeks, U.S. Steel didn't tell anybody that all the environmental regulation equipment had been burned and wasn't working. So Pittsburgh had air quality that was worse than most cities in China that week. We were getting alerts telling us not to go outside. And so we went down into this this hearing with Summer, and I show up there. We're down in Clarendon, which is about 14 miles south of Pittsburgh in the Mon Valley. We show up there, and there are 200 steelworkers in orange jumpsuits shouting and heckling her in this hearing.
So organized by U.S. Steel, right?
Organized by U.S. Steel with the help of the steelworkers. They were holding steelworkers signs. And the steelworkers have certainly opposed her. The last time when she ran for state rep, she was the only incumbent state rep in Pennsylvania that the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO actively opposed.
Interesting. Very interesting, because, labor is your beat. And we've talked a lot, Mike Elk, about the new wave of labor as opposed to the old establishment of labor. And while, I have friends and, people I feel solidarity with in all dimensions of the labor movement, that to me says that institutional cozy relationship that sometimes develops between a large union and an employer really can stand in the way of progressive organizing. Am I reading too much into that?
No. It's a big issue here. U.S. Steel, look, this was a company that was cited repeatedly by the EPA for violating the Clean Air Act. And, the steelworkers will do joint op-eds with U.S. Steel saying we're doing everything we can, while U.S. Steel goes and appeals and refuses to comply with the Clean Air Act. it's a big issue, particularly when you look at a union like the steelworkers, that not only is that their employer, but steelworkers have all kind of joint labor management committees.
Right.
That they get all kind of money from. And there's all kind of people that, U.S. Steel funds these projects, on trade, on environmental issues. U.S. Steel gives them the money, and then steelworkers make the hiring decisions. And they've been really awful. Although this time, we were able to unveil that her opponent, Steve Irwin, was co-owner of a law firm that had fought unions on several occasions.
You mentioned that, and I hope that's going to be in the article that's coming out. And I also want to talk about Summer Lee and Unite a little bit more, Mike, because I got to tell you, I have boundless respect for people who can organize like that. I mean, I do what I do, whatever it is, but something I know I don't have the gift for, that I so much admire, is people who can actually unite from the ground up, build and organize from the ground up, and create something that wasn't there before. You know what I'm saying? To actually bring people together and make something happen like that. It's an extraordinary gift to me. And the fact that she can do it at the local level, to me, that's a huge wave of the future, the self-organizing. I mean, last time you and I we talked about the Amazon Workers Union and how that got organized, sort of, what's the word, locally and germinated among workers themselves. It seems to me, I know this isn't just a workers' organization, but it seems to me she must have a special gift for creating and uniting. And I'd love to know a little more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's unlike, Dave Weigel was just up here a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking that it's pretty unique what she's done, because she was able to clear the deck early on because, they had helped elect a new progressive mayor, Ed Gainey, right? And so when you help elect, tons of state reps and judges and other people, when you come to run for office, you've got a machine behind you. And she's got a real gift. I mean, look, I love Bernie Sanders to death. I've been to a million Bernie speeches, and I typically hang out at the back of the crowd and talk to other people because I've heard that before. Summer, you never know what she's going to say. She'll talk about some news articles she read. I mean, the other day we were out in Homestead, and she was talking about lying in bed at night and thinking about how, we talk about the insurrection as if it was past tense on January 6th, but that There's been an ongoing insurrection, and what it's like serving in the state legislature with these guys. She was the first Black woman elected from Western PA, and one of only 4 Black state reps from Western PA in the House. I mean, there's a lot from Philly and some other areas. And so she's really has a unique gift for organizing. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch her emerge on a national level. I think in about a week and a half, you're going to start seeing a lot of profiles. I mean, the race, people have been really focused on Fetterman and Lamb since Fetterman's been all over MSNBC. He's playing in the Philly media market. We always have this terrible problem. Whenever there's election results on the local level in Pennsylvania, everybody focuses on Philly and ignores everything going on in Pittsburgh. It's a relationship that in many ways is analogous to, people in New York City and Rochester, right? We're the forgotten, city out here in the mountains. And I think you're going to start seeing her emerge as a national coalition leader, because she always has an ability to connect things. Circling back to the documentary that we did with Kamel Bell, Summer said in the documentary, she was talking about U.S. Steel and about how there's still a huge billion-dollar corporation that's based in Braddock, but yet Braddock is so poor, and how they pump pollutions in, they don't give any tax base. And she says, and she calls U.S. Steel a colonizer on national TV in an Emmy-nominated documentary. There's never been a local elected official who's done that, who's picked up on a lot of the deep environmental pain. I mean, look, I'm certainly supporting in the Senate election Malcolm Kenyatta, because he'll call for a nationwide fracking ban. And I think if you look at Fetterman's cowardness on that issue, when political polling shows, by a 12% margin, Pennsylvanians are opposed to fracking. It's not a politically popular issue. And so she's really, if you look at a lot of these races that she ran on the local level, they focused heavily on environmental issues, which, Pittsburgh's becoming a tech hub and a medicine hub. But really, a big issue that's holding it back, and there's been all kind of articles, is, people move here from the West Coast, from San Francisco, from the tech world. They move here, and they were like, oh my God, this air is horrific, right? And it's a big issue, especially for people coming from those environments. And so it's one that I think you're going to see. We're getting into a very exciting period here.
Well, and let's talk about this period a little bit, Mike, because you've been talking, you use the phrase, the socialist takeover of Pittsburgh. And I'm curious to know what you mean by that. And I'll start by saying, I have a great affection for Pittsburgh as a place. It reminds me of my hometown. It reminds me of a lot of places where working people live and gather. So I'm very curious about that comment. And maybe it's clear that Summer Lee is playing a pivotal role in that, but maybe you can tell us more about that takeover process.
Yeah, it's been a 5-year process. It started with some of these judicial elections. Then Sarah Emirato, she's a local progressive. She got elected the same year as Summer, and they helped elect other people on the county council and the state reps races. And they really built an organization. And so, you're looking at progressives. Attica Scott is in a tough fight in Louisville. Nina Turner just lost a race in Cleveland again.
Right.
You're looking at progressives that are getting wiped in all these races. But here, Summers campaigned in these places, for several election cycles now, and built people. And, the thing about Pittsburgh is, right, we're in Allegheny County, which is a county of about 1.1 million people, and the city is about 300,000. So there's all these little municipalities right outside of Pittsburgh where they've gone in and elected city council presidents and mayors and things like that. And I'm actually really excited if she becomes congresswoman, which hopefully, fingers crossed. It's been interesting covering this. I've never had to cover an exciting national political figure who's also a high school buddy, which is certainly
who has
it's certainly I haven't covered it as much as I'd like because I don't want to be accused of writing puff pieces,
right?
But at the same time, she is going to be my representative, and I do think journalists should vote. It's actually quite funny because we revealed that her candidate was a union buster. He co-owned a law firm that filed a amicus brief in front of the National Labor Relations Board, arguing that college athletes shouldn't be allowed to unionize. Now, they didn't have a client in that case. They just wanted to weigh in on the case as labor law experts, right?
Yeah, they were trolling for business from anti-union employers, right? That's why they do that. They get their name out there as an anti-union firm so that they can get union busting work. Yeah.
It's totally why they do it. It's horrific. It's really bad. And, he got caught out on this because of our reporting. I don't know who, but some buddy took an article, a payday, printed it, formatted it, and mailed it to all 1,000 Democratic committee members in the county.
Oh, really? Oh, that's a good thing to do.
It certainly wasn't us, but they mailed a copy of our article out. And he got quite defensive, and I guess he was up in front of a local ward and accused me of being friends with Summer Lee, which, I don't know, I wasn't cool enough to quite be friends with her in high school. We knew each other. We weren't
well,
the attack ads are really flying right now. When they get that desperate. So,
yeah, that's, her candidacy raises a really interesting view. I had this conversation on this show with Pramila Jayapal years ago, and this is a whole other conversation, but excuse me, but Pramila came out from the organizing world too, and the idea of a politician as organizer, Bernie used to say, Sanders, when I worked for him, that if he became president, he wanted to be organizer in chief, right? And there is this model of being an elected official that says, I don't see my job as like telling you what to do. I don't see my job as just listening to people, lobbyists or others come to me and then doing what's best for my career. I see my job as a combination inside, outside. I organize, I motivate, and then I vote accordingly. And I wonder, has Summer Lee talked about this at all?
Oh, yeah. I mean, she talks about it all the time. And, you know, it's really kind of fun covering her because, I mean, one, she'll fuck with me. I mean, she'll just tell me jokes and fuck with me, but also challenge me and challenge me to think about things. Like, you know, we both went to a mixed race high school together, and she actually inspired me to write an article about, you know, we often ask about what Black teachers do for Black students, but what do they do for white students, right? And how important that is. And I wrote about several Black role models and you know, being a weirdo and an outsider and Jewish and in a very Catholic working class 1990s Pittsburgh. She talks often about this organizer in chief. And by the way, she's been endorsed by Bernie, AOC, the whole gamut of folks. And I think, you know, you're going to see her up there really, really shake things up in a big way. I mean, this is someone who's just very sharp, very think on their feet. I mean, I'm being honest. I've probably seen Summer speak, I don't know, 30 times, 40 times. And every time it's different. You know, there's certain catchphrases and you know, motivational things. I mean, she's someone who always says, you know, power as people. I'll never forget being with her on election day with Joe Biden. It was quite impressive. I don't know how many people remember this, but we certainly remember it here in Pittsburgh. That Saturday, a couple days after the election, they were waiting on the election results, and if they won PA, they would go. And there were
I remember
30,000 misplaced ballots, that there was some sort of printing error that they had to rule on. It had to go before a judge, right, here in Pittsburgh. And there had been an organized protest march to go march on where they were canvassing. The march was scheduled at 1. And we were going to march down East Carson Street, which is kind of like the South Boston of Pittsburgh. That's not a place Black people really hang out. Or even Jewish folks. It's not a nice spot. So we were going to march down there. And at 11:27, I think, about 11:30, they called the election results after they determined that the ballots were good. And she was, and it turned into 1,000 people were in this big party district. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Summer gets up on the platform and she says, "Movements are won right here in the streets of Pittsburgh."
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that was remarkable. And I'll tell you another story about that day that was amazing. And I have an automatic mental association of Apache with that day, the song Apache. Black woman who we had been in the housing projects who was singing Marvin Gaye, blah, blah, blah. We were with a German reporter, and they it went viral in Germany. And this woman, you know, was singing, and everybody was nervous and on edge. You know, are we going to win? You know, won for Trump the last time. And we were in this, Summer was up on the back of this pickup truck, and there was also a DJ. And so we were marching down the street playing music. And I saw, you know, whenever you're a reporter and you're in a crowd at a protest, you're always nervous. You're always running around trying to find someone who's interesting. And we're going down the street, and I hear the song Apache kick on. And I see that the same Black woman who had been singing, calling into a bar and getting people to come out of the bar and dance to Apache. And anytime, I just started crying. Anytime I hear the song Apache, I have automatic mental association of running into that same woman who I had seen so nervous on election day, elated, in a state of joy, shouting. And I've marched with Summer. I've been in some tough marches against the police. I mean, she's not just someone who I mean, look, she's the only Black woman elected to the state house from Western PA. So a lot of Black folks here in Pittsburgh look to her. And she's just not had to represent as a state rep. She's had to represent as a movement leader. I mean, she got tear gas shot at with rubber bullets. I mean, she's an activist and she's a soldier in the movement. And I think, you know, when you see her, it's really gonna help C-SPAN's ratings, some of those hearings. Let me tell you that.
And you know, your story about Apache is why I always say the internet is not it when it comes to change. Change happens in the streets. Change happens with human beings gathering and deriving energy from each other. And Mike Elk, before you go, one last thing. You did a story, you know, you did a bunch of news, squibs. I don't know if it was yesterday, I think it was, or among other things, you raised a question, will labor strike to protect abortion rights? And you also, of course, in the context of Summer Lee, she is the woman in the race, and she's a Black woman, and we know that the repeal of abortion rights will hit poor women and people of color especially hard. Has that directly or implicitly come up in her race at all, you think?
Yeah, it's come up quite a bit. You know, that kind of thing. I mean, she's the real deal, and I think, you know, already. I mean, she's been talking heavily about abortion rights. I think, you know, you look at a state like PA, right? You know, it's protected right now under law, abortion rights, even if the Supreme Court decision goes through. But if a Republican governor gets elected here, which could happen, it will go right back. So we're really on the front lines here in Western PA. I mean, if you look at Pittsburgh, right, all the counties outside of here are Trump counties, you know,
right?
And you go out in a bar in Pittsburgh and run into Trump voters. It's not uncommon.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure, you know, Utica's the same way. So yeah, and to me, this is, among other things, a test and a model for how left candidates can run in Rust Belt towns, cities and towns, in mixed, you know, urban, rural, Trump plus, city stuff. So it's a really, really important race. I'm really glad you're on it. I hope you'll send us that piece on Summer Lee when it comes out so that we can talk about it on the show.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
All right. And I want to remind people also, my guest is Mike Elk, ELK, and you really should read the Payday Report and support its work, paydayreport.com. So listen, Mike, as always, you've been doing great work, and as always, great to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too.
All right, man, be well. And we'll be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.